I'm pleased to introduce Lou Dalton. Lou Dalton is one of the winners of the British Fashion Council New Generation Awards. She's a menswear designer, and we're just going to talk a bit about her career, where she's come from, what she's doing, and where she's going, and to get an insight into working in the fashion industry as a designer today. So, Lou.
Hello.
Hello. Tell us a bit about, how you started.
I left school at 16. I come from a little town called Market Drayton in Shropshire, and decided to leave school. Wasn't particularly interested in school. Left school with a handful of GCSEs, and decided to take up an apprenticeship with a bespoke tailor. And it was part of a scheme called a YTS, which is Youth Training Scheme, something that dear old Maggie Thatcher decided to put an end to. It was a fantastic opportunity, and I chose to take that because I really felt that school didn't offer me I didn't feel like it was offering me anything. I didn't really have the desire to go on in further education at that time, so chose to take up this role. Wasn't really sure at that time whether it was I was being led into due to a yearning to be in fashion or what really, because the tailor that I worked for was a guy called Arthur Pardington, and his practice was called Pardee Clothing. And what Pardee Clothing actually did, they produced shooting gear for the likes of Purdey and Son, which is in London. It's very famous. And so obviously I was exposed to clothing on a very different level, very much more like a formal shooting kind of thing and not really fashion related. I suppose my only kind of experience of being exposed to fashion was actually waiting in the doctor's surgery and seeing a Vogue on a table or something at that time. So I chose to do this, not really sure how it was all going to balance out. And then, I don't know, I was just like a sponge really, and it became part of my DNA, and also a kind of yearning to have, a life or a career in fashion. Working with a man who was as talented as Arthur, being exposed to all the skills that I think are extremely important within fashion, i.e. design, pattern cutting and construction, at that age was, it was incredible really. So I started working for him as a YTS apprentice at the age of 16. And at that time, I had two groups of friends, one of which were quite rebellious and the other group that were quite I can explain, they were very much into their study and they were pursuing, I suppose, what is the normal route through education, GCSEs, A-level, foundation, which is is the right way to do things. And in the end, I ended up gravitating towards that. And when I could see my friends moving on, and I also, it became quite clear that for me to be able to further my education or further my dream of being a designer or something within fashion, I would need to go back into education.
You're obviously a menswear designer.
Yeah.
Why specifically menswear? I mean, most designers tend to veer towards women's wear.
Yeah.
And mostly men, really.
Yeah.
So you're a woman. Why did you choose menswear?
It was purely, I think, just because at the time when I started to work for Pardee Clothing, it was pretty much all that was going through the door. That's all I was being exposed to. So it just felt like second nature. I was always very much a tomboy anyway. I was never really a frou-frou kind of girl. And I don't know, I always kind of gravitated towards that kind of thing. But it was just, I don't know, being exposed to these amazing cloths, Prince of Wales checks or shooting tweeds and that kind of thing. It was just, I don't know, it just felt so right. As you say, being a woman in predominantly, sort of male-dominated area of work, didn't really come into it. I felt, no, I can do this, so I've got something to bring to the table, and that's what it was really. I suppose that, I was very determined and very focused because to me, it was the only thing I knew, really.
Tell us a little bit about your skills, being, having to pattern cut, having to know how to deal with the different weights of cloth, the the kind of skills that you need as a designer, designing either men's or women's wear? I mean, you still need.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting because I think sometimes, people's illusion or what people believe fashion to be is very different from the reality. The crux of it, as I'm sure, other folk will say, is that the design aspect feels very minimal in comparison to everything else that goes into creating or designing a collection. And for me, the practical side is key over everything because, having those skills, being able to sew from such an early age and being able to construct and understand how a garment is put together, being able to then pattern cut that, being able to then develop that, makes you a better and stronger designer because you understand it, the skeleton form. Instead of just sitting there and being able to just design a pretty picture, which pretty much anyone can do, you can then go into a factory, you can explain to them exactly what you want, and pretty much you can get what you want. And to me, that's the core of it. So having those skills, which I was kind of hell-bent on that, and in a way, I suppose, I came in from the more practical angle. And I know I do get asked, actually, how do you then transform that into like design and designing a collection? But it's just, I can't really put words to it, but you have this little story, this narrative in your mind, and it's just a process that just becomes like a natural form, really.
So what talk us through the process? I mean, some people start with the cloth, or some people start with a sketch, or some people, walk around town and think, oh, great building, how do I make that into a jacket? What is your process? It
is a little bit, I think, because when I first started this, it didn't have, it's kind of evolved quite a lot. So the time that I have now is less. But when I first started this, I used to be able to go off to a gallery a lot more than I do now. And it is very much that you'll be walking around, town, or you'll be on holiday or something, and there'll be an idea. So that is the starting point. There is that concept which, is integral to building a collection. And that is my starting point. And then I start to think about the colour and then the fabrics, and obviously start researching, obviously depending on the season, whether it be autumn, winter or spring, summer. And then, you start to build a mood board, and it's just like this constant link from, the aesthetic through the fabric. And then we will start to think about the form and what kind of silhouette. And obviously, although you obviously you're building your own aesthetic, you do a lot of research, or I do a lot of research into, sort of past collections that may have worked for us, or I historically look at things that may have sold for us and think, actually, the buyer quite likes that. Maybe we should touch on that again. And obviously, we're aware of trends and what other designers are doing. It's important to do that, but not necessarily emulate it, because you want to have a point of difference that makes you stand out from somebody else. And obviously, I think it's really important to look at, designers from the past and, or movements of the past or whatever, so that you can pull from that. And a good body of research is core, really, to a good collection.
So you've got this body of research. How do you maintain your own kind of the Lou Dalton aesthetic, which is, if you see something, you need to know that it's coming from you, or the customer needs to know. How do you maintain that?
Yeah, it's quite difficult actually sometimes. And of late, over the last 4 seasons, I chose to work with a stylist in a way, because sometimes you're in your own little bubble and you can get quite caught up in that. And it's very easy to do what you think, or do what you want to do, and actually ignore what is actually right for your customer, or the brand that you're trying to build. Because even though we're not nowhere near on the same level as Dries van Noten and Raf Simons and the like, but they have a strong client base, and to be able to try and get folk on board in terms of being as a consumer, we need to be able to build an identity. So if we go back to the drawing board every season and try to redesign the wheel, then any kind of client that's kind of come on board one season may drop off the next. So to me, it's quite important that there is a thread, that we start to we look at what we've done and what worked for us, and then working with a stylist, which, doesn't always work. And, obviously this is your baby, and it's your, your direction, and you're pushing this. But it's good to have somebody else who's actually being exposed to so much product, so many shows, so many designers, and actually can see what's actually going on, what's coming through as well, to make your collection seem relevant. Because unfortunately, as a young brand, buyers want to support you, but find it difficult unless they can see how this could fit alongside the bigger boys or the bigger brands that they're stocking. So that's kind of how I really do take on board what we've sold and what we've done in the past. I think it's important.
You have quite a big international following. Well, well, you started what 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You're selling internationally.
Mm-hmm.
Is it important that you are a British designer selling, something that is has that heritage?
I used to think it was really, really important, but I don't know, as a consumer as well as a designer, I like product that feels honest and well constructed and just, lives up to the bravado or whatever, the spiel that's been said about it. And I think the feedback we've had to date is that the product stands alone. It's not really, we're not having to force the fact that I'm British, that it is a made in the UK product, whatever. I do think it's important, especially in Japan and equally the stateside at the moment. They're very much homing in on that. But I think folk want value for money, and if the quality doesn't back that up, it doesn't matter who you are and what you do, they just start to move away from it. They're not interested, because if you can't back it up with the quality, I think there's an issue there, really.
How involved are you in the quality kind of the process? I mean, do you see everything right through to completion?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I was talking to my assistant the other day, actually saying that the admin side and all the kind of looking after the cash flow and so forth, I find really quite frustrating, because I really enjoy the practical side. Because if push comes to shove and we are not in a position, or times are hard and we have to bring it all in-house and we had to manufacture, I could do absolutely everything apart from the sweater that you're wearing. I can do everything. And that's the thing, it's because that's part of my DNA, is being able to, I know that when a factory tries to pull the wool over my eyes, I'm there straight away, because at the end of the day, a factory, you're bartering constantly to get good price, good quality. And unfortunately, some designers don't care. They just think they just want to get the product out there. But, if I want longevity in the industry, I've got to back it up, because I can't expect to warrant a certain amount of revenue for a shirt or a jacket if the quality's not there. So, yeah, it's all very hands-on.
How big is your team?
Very small. I wish.
That's quite important, isn't it? I mean, when you're starting out, you don't start out with 6 assistants and 24 machinists.
It's very small. I'm probably too small to some degree, but it's I think, and I'm sure a lot of the guys in the audience, when you, as a designer, or as within this area of work, that there's a sense of control, and it's really hard to let go of that, because it is one way to be able to monitor quality control. And of course, you have to let people in, but financially, I'm not in a position to have a team. I don't believe in taking on an army of interns. I think it's not practical, and it's not particularly right. So, it's a team of 3, and one of those people is my partner, who floats in and out. So it's myself and an assistant.